Hey, sports fans, Larry Eater here. This is Brooks on Running, a collaboration between Brooks and Run Blog Run. Today we have Kevin and Keith Hanson, the co-founders of the Hanson's Brooks Original Distance Project. Good morning, guys.
Good morning,
Good morning,
Larry.
Larry.
So today we're going to pick Kevin and Keith's brains on cross country. And we're in the thick of the season. You know, the NCAAs are just a week away. The Brooks Cross Country Championships, supported by Fleet Feet, are just a few weeks away. Most of the state meets have happened, and they're giving out those golden tickets on the Brooks event. So,
That's
guys,
super cool.
yeah,
That's
isn't that
super
fun?
cool. I had a
Yeah.
chance to see one of them the other day. They look really super cool.
Oh, neat,
It's
neat,
it's
neat.
not just a golden piece of paper. It's an honest golden ticket. It's really cool.
That's awesome. So if you were talking to a room full of high school coaches, um, let's just kind of start give them a little bit of understanding of how important cross country is and how to prepare the entry level kids.
You
Where would,
definitely go ahead. We can, Kev, you want to go first? You want me to go? I
No,
don't care.
go ahead. Go
All
ahead.
right. So, yeah, definitely, we view cross country as absolutely critical for the sport, development of the sport.
Mhm.
Um, Certainly, and Kevin, as you know, coached high school cross country for 30 plus years. I coached high school for just 5 years, but I also started a middle school program. So I saw
Wow.
people at the very beginning. We've had a middle school camp that we've done through the stores. So I think it's great. Starting kids out in the sport, cross country is fantastic. It's more excitement than running around the track for most kids because they're running in parks and fields and on grass and different surfaces. But just getting kids to understand how far a little bit of dedication can go to basically get you into the sport, develop in the sport. My whole intention when I started the middle school was to get kids to get excited about the sport so that they wanted to continue on with the sport as they got older.
Mhm.
And so, it was real important at that age, in my opinion, just to learn how to get them to understand that a little bit of work goes a long way. Teach them a routine without making it where it's where they can decide that they want to become dedicated. Because I think you can't force that. I think it's something that a kid decides it's important to them. And when they start asking you questions about what else they can do to get better, you know you've achieved something.
Cool, cool. Um,
Yeah, I think the really coolest thing about our sport is that it's most of our people, even like 60-year-old marathoners, and that's not a shot because I'm older than that, but even most of them got their introduction to the sport in cross country. And
mhm.
so it's a lot of our introduction to the sport. So we have fond memories of that. Sometimes people start families, get away from it, so on and so forth, and then come back to running. And they may not run cross country, but it was cross country that first sparked their interest in our sport. And so I'm always conscious of that. And I think that our product is good. Our sport is great. So the product itself is awesome. And with cross country being the product, it's like an excellent introduction.
Keith, what were your biggest lessons in coaching kids? What were the things that you learned that three things that really worked when you were trying to inspire kids about cross country?
Right. I think the biggest thing in middle school and high school is just developing a culture, developing a situation where kids are supportive of each other and they enjoy working hard together and recognize that it's fun to work hard because the result that you get from it, but also just the whole process of learning to work hard and how far that can carry you in other aspects of your life. So my goal was to get that every kid on the team to respect each kid on the team. So if you're really focused on those kids that were the 10 slowest kids, I had 100 plus kids on my middle school team. And when you focus on those 10 kids that were the slowest kids and gave them the same sort of demands and expectations that you gave the top 10 kids, it really built that culture because you would see those kids working so hard to get better. And nobody, in my opinion, some of those kids that maybe weren't the most talented or weren't the most athletically gifted, nobody has ever challenged them in sport. They've always just been said, oh, okay, you're okay over there. You do what you're doing over there. But I would like to try to put expectations on those kids to set goals that were reasonable for them, but knew they had to work really hard for them. And what that resulted in my opinion, that's how you built culture. So for me, I built culture by getting the best kids to respect the work ethic of the kids that were the slowest kids when they started. Surprisingly, some of those slowest kids worked their way up and were contributors to your team in scoring even later, but they're always contributors from a mindset and an approach to the sport. And once you got the situation where it wasn't like, oh, these are the good kids and these are the bad kids or whatever, all the kids were the same. You got that mutual respect. You could definitely build a culture because kids were then willing to work hard and help each other work hard.
Thanks, Keith. Kevin, when you're coaching high school cross country runners, do you find that most of them had an experience in junior high? Or are they new to the sport?
For me, I was in a school system, and by the way, our team, I coached for 34 years, and we went to the state meet 31 of the 34 years. So
wow,
won 3 state titles, and so we had success. We did not have a middle school program at all. They do now have a middle school program. So I was definitely their first introduction to the sport. I took that as something that was awesome because no one had established bad habits. No one had had ways that they thought that things should be done. They came to us with their clean slate and ready to go. And so the big thing for me was always showing them that our sport was a viable alternative. Most of those kids that were on our team were involved in Little League, football, baseball, soccer, basketball, involved in all kinds of things, but we don't have a Little League running team. And so there's no such thing. And so because of that, this became their first kind of introduction. And I cherish that. I still do. I miss that part.
Cool. Oh yeah, that's cool. All right. I'm going to throw some things out and see what your suggestions are. Again, suggesting with high school kids, and we know there's a difference between freshmen and sophomores and juniors and seniors. But as you're beginning kids in cross country, do you worry about mileage?
No, I worry about mileage is dependent upon where they come in at.
Okay.
Some kids, and it's not always a year in school because sometimes you can have a first year junior. And so they fall into your first year runners, not your junior runners, even though they might be physically stronger and things, they still come in with zero experience. I always would joke about trying to, if you came to any kid and say, hey, our distance is 5K, boom, you have turned them off right off the bat. Most kids don't think that they can handle that it's more than even though we all know that that's not the case. Yeah. So I usually start with fake mileage kind of thing. And what I talk about with that is like, we'll start with some of the beginners and we'll do 3/4 of a mile to a mile warm up. And then we'll do like 4 halves that we're doing at really slow pace, nothing that's even close to what they're going to be racing at. And we'll do 4 halves like that. We'll take intervals between them. And then we'll do a mile, 3/4 of a mile to a mile cool down. And I'll say, you realize you've just run 3.5 to 4 miles? No way. And they're always surprised by that when you break it up and give it in attainable amounts. And pretty soon they're no longer afraid of the distance that you're doing. So it's not, for me, it's kind of mileage does become important, not that, that there's a right answer or a wrong answer to mileage, but mileage does become important because from mileage comes strength. But first you have to get them to wrap their mind around the fact that they can do this.
Keith, is that your experience when you were coaching middle school?
Well, in middle school, the biggest thing I was getting there is trying to develop consistent habits. And we would do the same thing. Like for example, there's routines. Like you want to do a warm up and you want to do a cool down. and you want to, but a warm up and a cool down just in itself is a lot of miles when you got to figure out how to make that work. So we had a little middle school like field back that we would use, and one loop around it was like 1 kilometer, and
Yeah.
1 kilometer wasn't a big distance for a warm up, but it was the routine that was more important. So it was fun because I'd teach the kids, okay, we're going to do a one loop around here, which is 1 kilometer. We don't want to walk because we're trying to warm up our body. And then we would stretch after that. Then we'd have some modified workout that, like Kevin said, we'd break it up. We try to sneak some mileage in. Some, 2 times or so, we do like some interval workouts in the field. Other times we do just an easy road run, with the emphasis being run the distance that you can handle. I would let kids at that age pick their distance. And it was fun because what would happen is we'd do like, this group's doing, we have one loop that you cut off here. It's 1.5 miles. This loop is 2.5. This loop is like, we'd go as much as 3.5 or 4, depending where we're at in the season, for the biggest group. And it was fun because it wasn't based upon pace. It was based upon what they thought they could handle that day.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened when kids would start challenging themselves, it became sort of a competitive thing with the kids in a good way, where they were encouraging them to go, oh, I'm going to do the longer loop today, or and it was so fun because the kids would just, I'd let them work their way into it where they felt they could handle it. But I would make sure that they didn't go a distance that they had to walk at, because it was important to continue to run. So all I'm teaching is habits, and then the kids who want to do more miles, I would have them do a little bit of a cool down, which is basically sometimes the same pace as a regular run. The other kids, I would say, oh, we're just going to stretch over here to make sure they weren't doing too much. So it was just a matter of building kids' confidence. Like Kevin was saying, he was doing it by giving them, breaking it up and making sure they didn't realize how far they were going. Here, I was doing it sort of the same way, but also to try to make them, like, again, it became a competitive thing in a good way, where they would just try to challenge themselves to go a little bit more. And then that became a goal for them. So that's kind of how I worked their way into it from the middle school standpoint.
It sounds like that both of you were building success after success. I remember interviewing John Powell, the discus thrower, and John coached my throwers when I was a community college coach. And his idea was he wanted the kids to have something successful each day. So they built on their success. It was almost like he called them positive affirmations, And I like the approach that both of you took with middle school as well as with high school. What do you think about, and this is going to kind of shake it up a little bit. Recently, the president of World Athletics has talked about bringing cross country into the Winter Olympics. What do you guys think about that?
Go ahead.
I think I think it'd be awesome. I think, first of all, anything that would provide a larger stage for our sport is great, because, as I said earlier, our sport, the product itself, is very good. Sometimes our problem or our disconnect with the public is that we don't get opportunities to showcase our product. And so this would be an additional way to showcase. And so, my hand, both hands way up voting for that. I mean, not that I get a vote, but that's
Thanks,
how
Dave.
I feel.
I like that. Keith, what do you think?
Yeah, it's long been discussed, and I think it would be wonderful. Like Kevin says, I mean, I don't care where they put it, whether it's winter or summer, just to have it in there would be fantastic. I miss it. There's not a World Cross every year now. I miss it. There's not a World Road Championship or half marathon every year now. I loved it when those were every year. So putting it back in the Olympics maybe, would again bring more spotlight onto that, or putting it in the Olympics, I should say. And I know it's been discussed forever. I think Kevin would know more about that with Coach Dyer at Macomb Community College back how many years ago, Kevin had?
Yeah, it was the early '80s that Bill was part of a committee that tried presenting this.
Wow. Well, let's talk, focus on World Cross for a little bit. I love it, and Joe Henderson, longtime writer at Runner's World and Track and Field News, had the best description of World Cross. He said it's the meeting place of the miler and the marathoner. But now they've got 10K, and it's to be egalitarian, right? But do you think they should have kept the 12K in the short race, or what's your thoughts on World Cross?
I like one race personally, but I like it, and I do like the idea of trying to get if they can have a way where they can get some more of the people that have been milers, even 5,000 meters guys that don't step to the 10 to participate and be part of that, it's fantastic. The more, back in the day, that used to be the case. And Kevin, was the situation with, was it Bill Rogers and in the miler, who was the miler that they were finishing together? What was it, Walker? No,
Walker. Yeah. 75.
It was the year that Rogers and Walker. Like, I mean, that's the kind of thing you don't see anymore, and I love that. So I wish it was. I don't mind if it's 10K or 12K. Whatever brings more people to the table is better to me. But I like the one race. But maybe Kevin feels differently.
No, I 100% agree with Keith on that. I think, and we've seen that from some of our best milers or 1,500 meter runners. I mean, Cole Hocker, who now I know is considered a 5,000 meter runner as of this last year, but Cole was a solid cross country runner as well. Yeah. So I remember the COVID year, where Yared chose to run cross country rather than to run indoor, because they were like a week apart because of how they had set up the schedule, because his Notre Dame team, he felt like, had a chance to win a national championship. And that was a big deal, which is one thing that we have not yet talked about, which is the team aspect of cross country.
Please. Yeah. Kevin, why don't you start with that?
Yeah. I mean, I really think that there's something to that. And and that helps not only bringing the different distances together. Like I said, somebody like Yared that was like all about running cross country his year and giving up an indoor season to do that. That was like really cool to me, not just because it's a miler running cross country, but because it's a miler supporting his team. And that aspect of it, to me, the teamness of cross country is there's nothing like it. We won our first state title in high school, coaching wise, in 1985. That whole class was just inducted into our high school Hall of Fame last year. And every one of them talks about that being like highlights of their life. And you have to remember, these people, they're no longer 20, so when they're talking about this, these are 50-year-olds talking about how great that was and how special that was, and so on and so forth. But it's life-changing.
Yeah. When Kevin talks about the team component, I think just inherently the way the sport is set up with the 5 runner being in the pack of runners, and the success of the 5 runner that day having such an impact on how your team performs in the low sticks with the 1 guy or the 2 guy, it makes it inherently more team oriented, because it's so important what that 5 runner, even the 6 and 7 runners, with the ability to bump people and add points to your competitors. It's just that makes it so much more of a team component thing, and balances the highlight of the winning time versus the team. And it's Kevin said that's what makes it so different than other things in distance running, is you definitely make it a team sport when you score it the way you do.
Now, will you guys have a Hanson's team at the U.S. Championships on December 6th?
We will. We're not sure yet whether or not we'll have complete teams, but we will definitely be represented there with individuals and things. The calendar is not real favorable. As far as it, not because cross country's there, but because it is, we are primarily a marathon group. Sure. And that is also, CIM is the day after that.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I forgot. Yeah. Oh wow.
And CIM is this year's USATF Marathon Championships as well.
Wow.
So it's there's a lot going on at that same time. And I'm not even talking about working out like where some milers and things think that or even 10K people think it doesn't fit in with indoor and therefore I can't do it. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about logistically. It's the next day. So it's like, so there are some of those problems that for us make it a little tougher as a marathon group. But we definitely have been super supportive of club cross country within USATF for years. And have won it several times, but also just being there with all the clubs is kind of cool.
Yeah. Now I recall for years and years and years seeing you guys down at Disney doing the half down there and then training down there for a couple of weeks. Do you guys still do that?
We are still down in that area. Disney. First of all, when John Hughes was the main man in charge and things there, he included us a lot of times, and we really appreciated the inclusion. However, that hasn't always been the case. I mean, he's welcome to have us there and stuff, but they used to have us speaking and things at the expo and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
That was great. We've had such people. A lot of people reach out to us saying, "Why don't you do that anymore?" And it's not that we stopped doing it; it was that they stopped having that aspect of the expo. It wasn't. We would be happy to do it forever. And that's the case at every expo. There's a lot of expos that will bring us in and have us talk and so on and so forth. And we just love that aspect of it. But we still spend time in Florida. We'll rent a house every year from January through March down there, and we bring athletes in and out, and they split their time between there and back here in Michigan. But we already are planning on going down January 5th again this year.
Awesome. How many currently do you have in the Hanson's Brooks Original Distance Project right now? How many runners?
22.
Okay. How many men? How many women?
It's fairly evenly divided. It's 10 women and 12 men currently.
Okay. And do you bring new athletes in each year?
Not always, but yes. I mean, we're always willing if athletes are good fits for the group. I mean, you have to remember, first of all, I should back up slightly and say we're only able to do this because Brooks has continued to see our vision. Like I say, when we first started, we did it without a sponsor from 1999 to 2003. And when Brooks stepped forward, it was because Brooks believed in what we believed in. Yeah. And we're really proud that a lot of times, there have been other groups that have started up and then kind of make a left-hand turn because we're now not going to be just this. We're not going to just be a 10,000 meter on up group. We're going to add middle distance people, and that's great. And that's super. But we've been true to that and trying to. It started because Americans were at an all-time low, and for us, it was trying to help promote American distance running and make us competitive again. But it became more than that. It became more about the struggle, the fight, the giving opportunities to people that wouldn't otherwise have those. And that would not happen today without the benefit of Brooks. Brooks has been such a partner, and they understand that. And I think, they're similar to us. They were a company that was, when we started with them, was struggling, and it became a grassroots company and did it their way and progressed in fashions that made sense, and they're awesome and killing it right now. But we really connected with that mindset, and they kind of connected with us for sharing that mindset.
That's cool. Thanks, Kevin. Keith, when you guys are looking for athletes, it seems to me, my observation over the last 2.5 decades of, I got to watch Des develop. I got to watch Brian develop. I was standing in Berlin on the course and going crazy. You guys really develop athletes. So if there are coaches who have young athletes right now, what would you tell them about what's the type of athlete that Hanson Brooks is looking for?
Well, we're always looking for people that will add to our group, that will contribute in one way or another. Obviously they need to be running at a certain level, but camaraderie within the group is really, really important to us, because what we do, and I always tell the athletes, what they do on a daily basis is hard and can be monotonous, and you better be doing it with people that you can enjoy doing it with. So it's really important that we have a certain sort of team camaraderie, that the people get along and respect each other. that are willing to work really hard, that are, obviously they're willing to take the long-term approach, because so many people, and it's just our society, that, they want to see what happens in the first 4 months and see where they're at. And it certainly doesn't work that way in our sport.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You mentioned Brian Sell, you mentioned Desi, both became Olympians. There's seventh year or sixth year in the program. And so we always talk about that when we have new athletes. It's like, you can't judge where you're at in 1 or even 2 years. It's a long-term process, and you need to be committed to that process. So people that think in that manner are important to us. People that are, and again, we're on more basic front, we're more of a strength-oriented group, and people that are, we've had athletes, for example, come and visit us and say, their favorite workout is doing all-out quarters, 12 all-out quarters. And we say, you'll probably never do that here. It's like, it's just not what we do, so there's nothing wrong with that athlete.
Sure.
But we want to look for people that fit what we're doing, people that feel they thrive on a little bit of higher mileage, that people that are that want to move up in distance generally, because if we're marathon has never been a requirement for our group, because of things like we started this conversation with cross country. If somebody wants to be a 10K cross country runner their whole lives with our program, as far as their athletic lives, we're completely content with that. They do not have to bump to the marathon, but it's still the same mentality generally for development as it is for the marathon. So we're looking for people that think that way, that maybe, the college coaches say, yeah, this guy just always was working hard for us, was a really good teammate, always got along with others on his team. Those sorts of people, obviously they got to be that all-American type level, to as a starting point. But there's so many of them out there. There's so many good athletes out there that people would go unrecognized without having somebody willing to look and develop them, like a Desi and a Brian. I think that made a big difference, just having somewhere where they had people that they could work with, and people who were patient with them to help them get along. Obviously, they were athletes that had incredible drive and achieved, in their accomplishments were a tribute to what they did. But the structure we provided, I think, assisted in that.
Cool.
So,
well, the one thing is, Larry, the one thing with that is people don't realize that, like, we're in an instant gratification society. And so what happens is, and this is where I lean back to Brooks again. Brooks was with us. When Brooks signed us in 2003, we didn't have an Olympian.
Yeah.
And in 2004, we had some really good results at the Olympic trials, finishing 4th and 5th, and Brian having led for 21 miles. But we still didn't walk away with an Olympian. So we still didn't have an Olympian. We were with them for several years before we had an Olympian. Brian's ran with us for 2 years before he ever ran in a marathon.
Wow.
and then ran 2:19:59.
Wow.
Desi was the same thing. Didn't run a marathon in her first 2 years because she was developing as an athlete, and debuted at 2:44.
Yep.
2:44. And so people forget that these are athletes that, like, in today's society probably would not have ever become Olympians, because ourselves and Brooks didn't support them before they ever achieved anything at a level that proved that they could be Olympians. Kerry Pinkowski will always said to me before, he goes, I've repeated this. Kerry supported us from the beginning. Yeah. And so Kerry, Chicago Marathon, I'm talking about now. And Kerry, I would always say that Kerry Pinkowski treated our athletes like professionals before they were.
Yeah.
That's cool. So there's been a lot of people out there that have been supportive of our group, but it has only happened because Brooks has realized the importance of that aspect. You can't just be looking for the top 3 guys in the NCAA or whatever. It's not, that's not going to produce what we do.
Well, it's so important to give young Americans a chance to develop. I'm going to do a story later today that 60% of the qualifiers at the NC Division I are foreign athletes. And I'm kind of going, what the living heck is happening? Well, we know it's happening. Programs have got to produce, man. And the NIL stuff, while I think it's in some ways can be good, I'm I'm cautious about it, and I support the programs like that you do. But for our viewers, coaches, and athletes, I want to give you both a chance to talk about Hanson's Brooks. How, what athletes, when athletes are part of your group, what are they doing on a day-to-day basis? Keith, you want to start with that?
Sure. I mean, we always run our runs together as a group. Obviously, we have different groups within our group that are preparing for different things.
Sure.
With that said, we start at 8 o'clock every morning on a run together. When it's not a specific workout, there's almost always somebody that has a workout amongst the group.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin and I are always at the timed workout. The other workouts, they meet at a given spot, several spots that they normally meet at, and they all run together, at least start out together. They don't always run everything together, but they do meet together because that's important from a team concept. It's not one person goes at 8 and one person goes at 10. They all go at the same time. So then for them, they go, and then some of them, after their runs and in mornings, will work in the stores. Most of them don't. Most of them have something else, or they are stipend athletes and they're not working at all. They're resting. They're getting, so basically there's a lot of rest required in between. They always, most of the time, have an afternoon run. We're doing 2 days for most of the time. We have gym memberships that they go to, and many of them will schedule their strength training that they do at the gym during the 2 runs or in between the 2 runs that day. So it's a lot of running, resting, sleeping, a little bit of work if for some of them that cover the stores or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of that and repeating that. Like Kevin said, when we get to the colder months, which we're approaching, we like to bring them back and forth between here in Florida, just for mental breaks and also physical workouts that we can get on solid footing and get ready for certain events that we're doing. We find that to help just the team camaraderie and just something to get away and focus on the running part. So, but basically their sleeping is very important. And, when you look at what type of athlete, they can't be like a regular 20-year-old. They got to be in bed at 10 o'clock and, and getting their rest and getting up the next day to repeat the whole process again. So there's some monotony, but they have fun with each other. They definitely, we have houses that some of them live in, some of them, don't live in them. They may have apartments on their own or whatever. They may have spouses. We have all different types. When we first started, they were all the same age and all lived there. But now we have athletes that are married, and we have athletes that have moved into an area where they can be with their spouse. But generally we still have program houses that athletes live in. We actually have 4 houses that athletes live in. And so we have some program housing above one of our stores that has apartments. So they're all just in the general area here. And, like I say, just doing what they do every day. We have schedules for them. When I say what they do, we have specific schedules. Kevin writes up the schedules.
Okay.
And he'll give them what their weekly mileage, what their daily mileage is, and what days we have workouts that are specific sort of paces, preparing for whatever they're preparing for: cross country, marathon, half marathon, 10K on the track. Right now we got a whole mix because we got people doing cross country workouts on grass. It's important to us that we do those on grass. We got people getting ready for a marathon, a couple Houston marathoners, Cal International Marathon. We've got, those are your 2 main groups right now because the roads mixed with the track.
The Marathon Project.
In the Marathon Project as well.
Yeah.
Yep. So those are kind of, a loose idea of what they do on a daily basis.
Okay, cool. All right, guys, I'm going to throw out some general things in training, and I'd like to get your opinions on them. And again, this is going to be for high school athletes, okay? The next bit, because, and you guys are really helpful, so I really appreciate it. But I don't get to pick your brains enough. So, I could do 3 hours, but we're going to do under an hour today. I promise. I'm trying to behave, It's really hard for me sometimes, guys, but thank you. So let's start with long runs. Kevin, what's your philosophy for high school kids with long runs? How do you develop long runs for them?
Yeah, we would work up to it. And it would be different depending on what their total mileage is, and
Sure.
like, and how basically their history. Like if somebody comes in as a freshman and they, for us, usually would work up to about 40 miles a week.
Okay. Okay.
Throughout the course of the season. And now, had they progressed through that, are they an athlete that runs year round, meaning that it's not just cross country and
Sure.
then they're a basketball player or whatever. It goes from cross country to indoor to outdoor to and back to summer training and so on and so forth. If it's somebody like that, and there is not an injury, that person's long runs would be someplace between 8 and 10 miles.
Okay.
The seniors that may have worked their way up to usually 60, maybe even the one outlier that maybe is running 70 miles a week, still would not be running long runs much more than probably 12 or 13.
Okay.
So,
okay.
so we don't go. We're not trying to create marathoners out of
Sure.
people that are racing a 5K distance.
Keith, what's your philosophy about long runs in terms of, for high school kids, about their pace? Is it about getting the time in? Is it getting the distance in? Is there a moderate effort? Is there a harder effort? How do you approach that?
Same as Kevin had said, there'll be different athletes that you have in some different. For the most part, I would say that the long runs are generally at a relatively comfortable pace.
Okay.
They'll get their workout days outside of those, and this is just getting volume in, and it can be beneficial for kids to get that volume in. So for the most part, the long runs would not necessarily be anything other than, like if you've got a kid who's a sub 16 5K kid, his long run probably still would be over 7-minute mile pace. You probably wouldn't really want them running it at the high school age at anything too aggressive, because I want to give them that aggressive stuff during the week when they're doing their other workouts.
Sure. And this is to both of you. I really would like to get your opinions about it. I see a lot of high school coaches using tempo runs. How do you look at tempo runs for high schoolers? When I do daily workouts for high school coaches, again, for a lot of the beginning coaches, right? And I suggest 20-minute tempo runs. What would you suggest for high school kids? And how do you manage that? What's your pace and those kind of things?
Much like, I think today's world's a little easier than when we started, because it's easier because most kids now have some sort of Koros or Garmin or some sort of thing that makes a world of difference. I don't believe in doing. I know that some people will do tempo runs on the track and I understand why, because it's easy to monitor that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's providing some of the best things that our sport has to offer. And so
Okay.
I prefer not doing those on the track. And I think you're more likely to come up with aches and pains doing on that inside leg of the torque of the inside leg going round and round and round and round. But so we would try not to do those. Our tempo runs always varied, much like our mileage varied. So it wouldn't have, and I know some people disagree with this. Some people say you're all racing the same distance. So why would your freshmen who are going to race a 5K the same as your seniors do less in tempo run? And it really has, for me, the answer to that is just that they're physically not able to handle it, is all. So some of them may start with something as like it might be 15 minutes, but by the time my seniors, they were doing 25 to 30-minute tempo runs.
Okay, cool. Did you do interval work for high schoolers in cross country?
Definitely. I mean, when I was coaching high school, and I know Kevin does too, some of the basic ones would be, doing anything from quarter mile repeats up to mile repeats, generally in that range, quarters, halves, 600s, 1Ks in miles. Most of the distances when I did those workouts were at their total volume of race. In other words, they'll do 5 1Ks because that matches the race distance, and
Sure.
they'll do 6 800s. And paces will vary throughout the season depending on early season, end season, even what you're doing as far as the workout. You do the longer ones often earlier, and then the shorter ones often later. You didn't generally do 400s until those last 3-4 weeks of the season. Everything else was longer than that until then, unless you did a cut down and did some sort of a ladder, and you would sometimes incorporate something shorter in there. But I think intervals, and we always did a jog rest in it for us too, just to try to keep the pace. To me, kids sometimes will go too fast, and speed. So for us, it was a matter of controlling it. It's like you earned your pace. What was your last race? Not what is your goal. What have you done? And then when you run better in your next race, you can earn a faster pace sometimes. So when we're doing pace oriented stuff, obviously when you're doing quarters or halves, sometimes you can go faster than your race pace, but you're basing it upon your race pace. So everything is based, if you've currently run an 18:35K in your 6-minute pace, I'm not going to have you doing half-mile repeats at 2:40. You've got to, I'd rather do more at the pace you've currently run until you've now run 17:30. Now you've earned a faster pace. So we can talk about that.
Got it. I like that.
So that's how we did it. And again, if it's a shorter distance, you can sort of say, okay, we're going to go 10 seconds per mile under your race pace or whatever, but it's still based upon your race pace. And you would cheat a little bit because you group people together. So if these guys were within 15 seconds of the race, that might be a group because you kind of wanted to have the people be that it wasn't exactly your exact pace, but within that range.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what would you both suggest for race day preparation? So I know some coaches believe in long warm-ups. Some coaches believe in doing the exact same thing each time. How do you talk to high schoolers about preparing for on a race day, how they should prepare?
I know one thing Kevin will say, and I'll steal it from him first, is we always made, both of us, and some of the things, again, keeping in mind, I'm 5 years younger than Kevin, so he had coached high school forever before I coached high school. So I did copy some things he did, and I think he was right on, and this is something he's very adamant about, is you always covered the race course. So if that meant, it's a 3-mile race course, then you did a walk run for your warm-up, and you did it longer because maybe you didn't want to do 3-mile warm-up. But you still got to cover the race course because it's up to the runners to know where the course goes.
Yep.
And so that was important. You also want to know exactly where the finish is. You don't want to say, oh, the finish is up there around that bend. Here's where the finish is. We're going to run right up to this finish. This is where it is. So that was a very important part. But you did that early in the season so that it wasn't something that was difficult or people thought, oh, that's too much. And and most of the time courses loop, so you're not even having to do a full, but you'd still do 2 miles plus. A lot of warm up, I think, is important with strides and build up before the race. But I think a routine is important just also for easing the athlete's mind. I think routine. Yeah. The person I heard speak about this one time was Bob Kennedy. Yeah. And he spoke about how the warm up routine was something that definitely provided comfort for him, that eased his mindset going into the competition. And so I think doing the same thing, no matter what that thing is, but for us, it was covering the course no matter what, doing the same general thing for your warm-up, I think helps people be more comfortable and just more prepared mentally for the race.
Cool.
So
Kevin, your thoughts?
Yes. I would, sometimes you start with a beginner and it's early September and that person wow, covering the entire course, a 5K cover. My thing was we would cover the course, even if that means that we can only race you for a mile of the 5K race, because we're going to establish that part of the routine first. And that became a big thing. I'm always shocked when people get to the state meet. It's the first time they've ever covered the entire course and it's your biggest race. And it's what are you doing? So when we went to a course that was a 1 mile loop that you did 3 times, we did it 3 times for a warm up, because it was partially knowing every step, but it was acclimating our bodies so that when we get to championship time of the season, this doesn't seem like too much of a warm up.
Yeah.
And we always started in a couple different ways. And I had an elaborate warm-up routine, but the varsity and JV did a little different. The JV kids would walk 5 minutes, jog 8, walk 5, jog 8 for the entire course. The varsity would walk 5, and by the way, the first walk is super important because in a big cross-country meet, I'm always amazed with the number of teams that go directly to the white line instead of the tangent up to the first turn. And so we would look at where that first turn was from compared to where our box was, and we would start walking that tangent to show. So it's 5-minute walk, 8-minute jog, and then we did 2 minutes, what we call up and down. So we would go, after that 5-minute walk, we would go 2-minute walk, 2-minute jog, 2-minute stride, 2-minute jog, 2-minute walk.
Wow.
And then by the time we did all of that, because we're doing a stride in the middle at race pace kind of thing in the middle, because I always tell people when you warm up, if you're doing like 600-800s, you run that first one, you go, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. I'm never going to be able to do this workout. And then the second one feels easier. And usually that's because no matter what you did warm up wise, you're not warmed up properly.
Yeah.
And so that's part of why I would do that with the varsity. And then we would after that last 2-minute walk, we would jog the rest, which was usually about 6 minutes.
Cool.
So, but it's, I did that routine forever and our people got used to that routine. And to be honest with you, that routine is too aggressive in the early part of the season.
Okay.
But I didn't care.
Yeah.
We still did it because we were getting our bodies acclimated for later in the season.
Sure.
You know, Larry, this reminds me of something because this same philosophy is also why we started doing something that I think Kevin has commented before that everybody didn't do before he started doing it. We take our marathoners to a course preview, usually at the start of the segment that they're training for that marathon.
Oh, wow.
So that's something that's transferred. And that went all the way back to, we did that when Des ran the Olympics in Rio. We went to Rio and ran that course before the Olympics.
Wow. That was a tough course. I remember, that was, I was staying in a favela, man. It was my brother and I. We were watching the military do their patrols. Wow. That was a fascinating Olympics. Wow. That's amazing.
That was like, we start Boston. We kind of chuckle because everybody now at Boston, when they signed to run Boston, it's part of their contract when they're coming out to do their course preview.
Yeah.
Before we ran Boston with our group and started Americans back at Boston, people didn't do that.
Yeah.
So it was something that we kind of like but it comes from this exact thing about covering the course is simple in high school cross country. It's the same idea. The familiarity with the course and knowing every part of the course. That's why we do these course tours.
There's a reason. There's a reason that Greg Meyer's best marathon he ever ran was on Boston, and Bill Rogers was on that they call him Boston Billy, and that people like Bob Hodge ran there way faster than any other place he ran. And part of those things happened is because they trained on the course every day, the familiarity of the course. And so for us, it's always, how do we create that familiarity if it's not in our backyard?
No, you guys, this is a wealth of information. And so you have survived now 56 minutes with me, guys, and you're still smiling. So this is the last little question for today, but I want to talk about in the future, again, the art of coaching, but also I want to take the time and really talk about Hanson's because I think it's incredibly unique, and I'm so proud of what you guys have done.
Thank you, Larry. We're proud of it too.
It's just really fun. And I also love when you guys talk on social media. You guys, I always look for when you're putting something up because you'll put these little wonderful tidbits up about like coaching or about the morality of running. And those things are really important, and you cannot believe how many coaches will copy those things because I have this whole coach group that I send your stuff to,
Well, thank you, Larry.
You guys make me smile, and there's just good people in the sport. Oh, and just to tell you, I got to interview Steve Jones and Greg Meyer recently. I'm starting a new
Yes.
Nice.
podcast called The Titans of the Marathon,
Yes.
Yes,
and they're my first two, and I'm going to get Bill
that's
next.
awesome.
But Greg talked about how many times he ran on the Boston course
Right.
and
Right.
why,
Yep.
like you guys said,
Yep.
and why it was
Yep.
so darn important. And,
Right.
I shared that with some young coaches, and they're kind of going, wow, we didn't think of that. And that's part of why, it's important to have you guys. So my final question today is about something I think American coaches do so poorly, which is recovery days. I cannot tell you when I ask how young coaches, what do you do for recovery day? And I get a blank stare, you know, and it totally freaks me out because it's this American obsession. And I've seen the Europeans do it, but I learned about recovery with European coaches, which is, if 1 mile's good, 3 miles are better. And sometimes that's right. You guys believe in high mileage, but you also believe in when it's a tough day, your body needs to recover so you can get the benefit of that day. How do you guys approach recovery days?
Well, let me tell you this. First of all, if I were talking to high school coaches, it would be a little different. High
Okay.
school coaches, to begin with, would be they're slaves to the calendar, and they're in the middle of racing and so on and so forth. But I think it's important for them, high school coaches, to remember a race is harder than a workout, and that recovery from a race needs to be even greater than what you would do from, like, if you're going hard Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's and not racing that week, that's fine. But if you're going Monday and racing on Wednesday, you shouldn't probably be going on Friday, and things that, your body definitely needs to re-net. But having said that, high school kids, just like the younger you are, they recover quickly and differently. And so kids recover way different, I think, than pros that have been doing it for a while. And so for us, we work on a 9-day week.
Okay.
And so basically, day 1 is your long run.
Okay.
2 and 3 are recovery days.
Okay.
Okay. Day 4 is something of substance, meaning that something requires a stopwatch. Could be tempo, could be hills, could be whatever, but it's something of substance on day 4. 5 and 6 are recovery days. 7 is something of substance. 8 and 9 are recovery days, and now you're back to the long run. This means that you have 2 days on both sides of the long run and 2 days on both sides of every something of substance day.
Wow.
So, for us, that's been beneficial in keeping people healthy, because the other aspect for us is that in college, you don't know how to handle a long run, because if you're too aggressive on your long run, it affects your workout on Tuesday. If you're not aggressive enough, then you're not getting the benefits of the long run. So like, what's the fun? And then, and everybody, that's a study of one, everyone's different in how that is. If you run your long run and you know that you have 2 days recovery after it, you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive and not screw up, where it's not going to affect the workout, which is on day 4. So so for us, that's been really beneficial in building strength.
Cool.
The other component I would add from a recovery standpoint is obviously the non-running component. Your eat, your sleep, those things. And I always do we do a high school camp every year, a local high school camp. We have 100, 150 kids at it. And one of the things I do is a whole little thing on do the right thing. And I talk about in high school, because kids have a tendency to things like this. They have a weekend, and so they're going to catch up on the rest, and they're going to sleep, but they can stay up later because they don't have school the next day. So they'll go to bed at midnight and get up at 11. I got to get 11 hours of sleep. And I always emphasize that consistency is so important, that you should roughly get the same amount of sleep each night, and it should be approximately the same hours as well. And I always emphasize, okay, you have a season that's, you're starting in September with meets, and for us in Michigan, our state meets the first weekend in November. So you've got, September, October, you got 9 weeks or so to really focus. If you want to really be a dedicated athlete, you got to do the right things those 9 weeks. And I always would put the emphasis on when you do homework assignment, you get a big homework assignment for school, and you say that thing's going to take us 8 hours. Well, if you're doing that 8 hours the night before it, it's not going to end up as well, and you're not going to get your rest. You got to do an hour and a half every day when you get that homework assignment. You're an athlete now, so you have to make better decisions. I talk about the Friday night football games. I'm like, you know what? Kids would come to you all the time and say, oh, it's a school spirit thing. I got to go to the football game because the team's going there. And I would come back with, does the football team come to your cross-country meet? And if they come to your cross-country meet, then you should go to their football game.
Yeah.
I've never seen a football team come to a cross-country meet. So that was an answer. I knew the answer right away that they're not. So let's focus on your season, and get to bed that. Don't be out at 10 o'clock in a 38-degree evening when you got one of your biggest invitationals the next day. It doesn't make sense. So from a high school standpoint, I talked just about, committing yourself to this 9-week period and getting to bed at the right time, eating the right things, getting the right amount of sleep, and being consistent in your sleep patterns, and make sure that on a weekend, instead of going to bed at 10, stay up till 11. Don't stay up till 1. It just doesn't work the same way. Your body's not going to respond. You won't fall asleep Sunday night. Monday, you'll be tired. So those are the other things to me from a high school standpoint that I like to talk about as far as recovery.
Okay, cool. Well, you guys have survived an entire hour with me, and I want to thank you. This is Larry Eder with Run Blog Run. This is Brooks on Running, a collaboration between Brooks and Run Blog Run. We're with, as I call them, the brothers Hanson, Keith and Kevin Hanson, the founders of the Hanson's Brooks Original Distance Project. Founded in 1999, Brooks came on board as their sponsor in 2003, and look where they're at now. But guys, thank you so much. Thanks for this morning. You made my day.
Thank you, Larry.